A couple of years earlier at WHAS, I had produced a series of reenactments of the Christmas story with wise men, Mary at the Inn, shepherds, and Julius Caesar, etc. This was in the form of a series of live news reports as if the story was unfolding at the time. I had used about every staff member I could find for voice tracks. It was called the 6 o'clock News. Unfortunately, that award-winning series of master tapes has disappeared. I guess one of the few times I was unsuccessful in retaining the masters. I used to joke about keeping my masters. I would say, "My mama didn't raise no fool. I'm keeping the master. You can have the dub." Well, anyway, subject at hand. The 1776 news desk. It was along the same lines. An unfolding news story broadcast in sequence throughout the day of July 4th, 1976.
Now from the 1776 news desk, here's Glen Bastin.
Perhaps an historic event in Philadelphia today, rumors from undisclosed sources have it that a Declaration of Independence from Great Britain has been or will be signed in that city by members of the Continental Congress. Now, you may recall we reported last month that there had been introduced to the Congress a resolution. It was introduced by Virginia Delegate Richard Henry Lee.
These united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved.
Now for public reaction to the story, we switch to Jim Ferguson on the streets of Louisville.
We're at the intersection of Jefferson and 5th, and we're speaking to various people at random. Sir, may I have your name?
I'm Louis Snyder.
Lou, what do you think about this alleged signing of the Declaration of Independence today?
Well, I understand this fellow Jefferson's the one that wrote it. Is that right?
They have alluded to this fact, yes.
Well, I think that Mr. Jefferson and his friends, they sound like a bunch of real instigators, real troublemakers. They liable to be in a whole lot of trouble before this thing's over with.
You're not exactly in favor of this declaration. Is that the feeling I'm getting?
Oh, I didn't say that, but the king's got a long arm, and king's liable to come over here and lean on us before this thing's over with.
You think that we might be stepping into something bigger than what we think we are?
Oh, definitely. We fellas may have bitten off more than they can chew.
Well, have you heard any about this declaration? What's in it?
No. I just, all I know is what the boys down at the King's Head Tavern tell me.
What do they say about it?
Well, they're not sure.
But it is being discussed, and you have heard about it.
Yeah, but I think for a lot of people, they think, this is just sort of a rich folks' quarrel. They're quibbling among themselves. And, Jefferson and Madison and all those guys, they're kind of, rich plantation boys from down in Virginia. And the king and all his crowd, and maybe rich folks are.
So for us average citizens, it probably won't mean too much, even if they do sign it.
Nah.
Stay with us for further developments as they happen. I'm Glen Bastin at the 1776 news desk.
Can you feel the spirit of a new song to be sung with harmony and peace for all to know? Yes, I feel the spirit.
Now from the 1776 news desk, here's Glen Bastin.
With the continuing story of this reported signing of the Declaration of Independence, we at the 1776 news desk have just confirmed to some degree that it was indeed Representative Thomas Jefferson who did the primary drafting of the document that has reportedly been submitted to Congress for adoption. We got some reaction to that from Jefferson County Judge Todd Hollenbach. We reached him at his home this afternoon by phone.
I think it's probably a good thing. I don't know, this guy Jefferson might be president someday if they have things going right. It could be the king of America, too, I guess. He's a pretty smart fellow, I understand. He's written some books and tell me he's a lawyer and a surveyor. A fellow designs buildings, invents things. I understand he's a farmer. He'd probably fit in good here in Kentucky. They also tell me he's edited an edition of the Bible, so he's, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. I guess he knows what he's doing on this thing, and if it gives us the kind of freedom that they've talked about from those British, I'm for him.
Well, we wanted to ask you about that. Have you heard parts of what might be in that declaration?
Well, it's supposed to give us understand religious freedom, which I think is pretty important, and free us from the rule of the king. And of course, I'm for that. And I don't know what it's going to mean, but I imagine that the old king won't give up too easy. But I think we're a little bit rougher and tougher and know this frontier a little bit better than he does. So I'd hope he'd just stay in England and take all his people, sympathizers back over there. They'll be a lot better off.
Well, what about the aspect now that portions of that declaration, as we've heard it, might be considered treasonous?
Well, if it talks about the freedoms of mankind, I guess that is treasonous to England, because they don't have any freedoms over there. That's why most of our folks and forefathers left that place to begin with. If it's treason, it's the kind of treason I like.
That was Jefferson County Judge Todd Hollenbach talking with Jim Ferguson. At this time, we have not been able to reach Thomas Jefferson personally for comment. It's thought he may be out of town for the holiday. Our 1776 news reporters continue to work on leads. We'll be back as soon as they develop. This is Glen Bastin.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land. Can you feel the spirit? Yes, I feel the spirit.
Now from the 1776 news desk, here's Glen Bastin.
This story of the signing of the Declaration of Independence continues to develop, and now at the 1776 news desk we have received what is said to be a copy of that document. In part it says, and I quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute a new government." It goes on to suggest that the King of Great Britain has set up an absolute tyranny over these states, and then further states, in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Now, that is a portion of what this Declaration of Independence says, the copy of it that we have obtained. Let's get some more reaction now to the entire idea of declaring independence. On the streets of Louisville, here's Jim Ferguson.
We're on the riverfront Belvedere, and I'm speaking with
Yvonne Gardner.
Yvonne. What do you think about this alleged signing of the Declaration of Independence today?
I think it's about time it should happen,
Why?
because we've been dependent on the mother country for so long, and we should start our own. We have this whole new country, and we can grow our own stuff. We don't need anybody else's help, and that's it.
Well, what about, we're talking probably about war at this point.
Okay, if we have to fight with them, we'll fight them. We know how to do it. They taught us how to do it. We can use a little bit of their ways to fight them back. And if we want this country to be free as we want it, we're going to have to fight for it.
What have you heard about this Declaration of Independence that they're supposed to be signing today?
I heard it was a good thing going. There's things in there. There was for everybody to be free and equal and all sorts of good things.
That was Jim Ferguson on the streets of Louisville talking to some Louisvillians about this reported document that concerns independence, a Declaration of Independence. Whether it has been adopted or submitted for adoption, we do not know. The story continues to develop. We'll stay with it. You stay with us. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land.
Now from the 1776 news desk, here's Glen Bastin.
As this story has continued to develop out of Philadelphia, the story of the signing or possible signing of the Declaration of Independence today, our political correspondent Bob Johnson has been listening and watching the developments. You heard earlier, Bob, our reading of a portion of the document. You've had some time now to think about it. What is your reaction?
I'm struck by the audacity of it all. What these men propose in this document is treason, and they have very few tools to carry out what they intend to do. They have no army. They have little navy. What navy they have is strictly merchant marine, and yet they purport to defy one of the great European powers. It is audacious, to say the least. It is that in another sense, too. The grievances that they list in this document are real enough, but it is also an example of the audacity of this document, that implicit in all of this, they intend to set up a new governmental framework in which these grievances are righted. This is something that revolution is one thing under these circumstances. Men can make revolution. They have made revolution in the past, but they have rarely made revolution under these circumstances, with the promise that the society they intend to construct after the revolution will have so many of these grievances corrected. It is at best an audacious undertaking, and I wish them well.
Thank you, Bob Johnson, our political analyst for 1776 News. We expect new developments to continue to come out of Philadelphia. We're going to keep watching them. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land. Can you feel the spirit? Yes, I feel the spirit.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
This story of the signing of the Declaration of Independence continues to develop. Let's get some more reaction now to the entire idea of declaring independence. On the streets of Louisville, here's Jim Ferguson.
Okay, we're on the Riverfront Belvedere, and I'm speaking with
Arnold Smith.
Mr. Smith. What do you think about this alleged signing of the Declaration of Independence today?
Well, I think that was something that we finally had to come to. I don't think they originally wanted to do that, but finally, I think King George forced it on us, and there's nothing else we could do. So I'm for it.
Well, this, of course, probably means all-out war.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I think they had took that into account. Benjamin Franklin said, we'll all hang together or we'll hang separately.
What do you think this might mean for us in the future?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. We don't know much about what's west of here. This is as far west as I've ever been. I don't think there's too much west. It's all Indian country and forests, wild animals. But from here on east, I think you'll see some great cities along this river. And I think one of these days you'll see New York or Boston, Philadelphia. I think they'll be up to probably, I don't know, 50, 60,000 people maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
That was Jim Ferguson on the streets of Louisville talking to some Louisvillians about this reported document that concerns independence, a Declaration of Independence. The story continues to develop. We'll stay with it. You stay with us. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
We've been attempting to reach General George Washington for insight as to what this possible signing of a Declaration of Independence might mean from the military point of view. We understand at this time General Washington and his troops are located in the vicinity of Brooklyn Heights, New York. However, communications are poor in that area, and we've not been successful in contacting General Washington. We do have on the line at this time, live, Major General John McHenry. He is the commanding general of Fort Knox, the military installation just to the south of Louisville. General McHenry, if this Declaration of Independence is in fact signed today in Philadelphia, what will it mean to our Continental Army?
Well, I think what it will really mean is that the Army will finally be supported in the way it needs to be if
the American people want to be free. As you know, it's been hit and miss, and support has been less than we need for our Army if we're to be victorious. Things have not been going well for us right now, and until we get the support of the entire people, there's no possible way that we can win this victory. But I think the signing of the Declaration will be a big step in this direction.
General McHenry, we've been attempting to reach General Washington in Brooklyn Heights, but we've not been successful so far. Have you heard how things are going there?
Well, quite frankly, it doesn't look good. We've been forced to retreat from Long Island and other portions of New York and from near Canada. And we, frankly, have serious difficulties, and we need more people, and we need more supplies.
And perhaps this declaration might achieve that.
Yes, hopefully it'll unite our 13 states.
Thank you, Major. Major General John McHenry. He is the commanding general of Fort Knox. We'll continue to watch developments. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land. Can you feel the spirit? Yes, I feel the spirit.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
We have now managed to reach the headquarters of General George Washington in Brooklyn Heights, New York by radio telephone patch. General Washington, can you hear me? Are you there?
This is General Washington. Go ahead.
General Washington, we wanted to ask you if you are now aware of this document called the Declaration of Independence. The rumor has it will be signed today.
Yes, we received an advance copy of the Declaration of Independence, and I had it read to the troops, and I hope that this very important event will serve as a fresh incentive to every officer and soldier to act with fidelity and courage. Things have been rather difficult here in New York.
General Washington, what is your situation with the military?
Well, late June, the British and Hessian mercenary troops numbered about 30,000. They were landed at Staten Island there in late June, and we've been standing by here.
That's a rather large army, General. How does that compare with your Continental Army contingent? Do they have the upper hand in terms of troop strength?
No, I really, for security, we really can't get into that.
Well, yes, I can understand that, but back to this Declaration of Independence. Has it had an effect on the troops, the men, since you read it to them?
I think we have already seen here at Brooklyn Heights tremendous improvement in the morale of our soldiers. They feel now that perhaps the whole country is becoming united.
General, can you tell me...
I'm sorry, you'll have to excuse me at this time. A couple of my scouts have just returned with new information on the British movements, and I must speak with them.
Yes, thank you, sir. That was an interview with General George Washington. He is commander of the Continental Army. They are now in Brooklyn Heights, New York. The story is continuing. We're continuing to watch it. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of a new song to be sung with harmony and peace for all to know? Can you feel the spirit? Yes, I feel the spirit.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
As it becomes clear hour by hour that indeed a Declaration of Independence will be signed today, we have sought comment and reaction from various people. We at this time have in our studios the Governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Governor Julian Carroll. Governor Carroll, what's your position?
Well, of course, it's a very grave occasion for all of us who want to be Americans in our own right. We've really been faithful to our father country, but our father country has not been faithful to our rights. And thus we have only one alternative, that's to seek our own independence. And obviously we do so with mixed emotions because it's breaking our ties with our old country. But we're establishing new ties for what we think will become the greatest country on earth, America.
Governor, what immediate repercussions will this have in your view?
Our very lives might be at stake, but while our lives may be taken for this act, we certainly will provide freedom for millions of Americans to enjoy that freedom to eternity.
Thank you, Governor Julian Carroll, for dropping by our studios. This is Glen Bastin, continuing to watch developments from the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
This story of the signing of the Declaration of Independence continues to develop. Let's get some more reaction now to the entire idea of declaring independence. On the streets of Louisville, here's Jim Ferguson.
We're on the Riverfront Belvedere, and I'm speaking with
Marie Benitez.
Marie. It's alleged that the signing of the Declaration of Independence is going to happen today. Have you heard about the Declaration?
Yes, I have.
What have you heard?
I've heard that they're going to sign, or they're thinking about it, and I'm quite excited about it.
What aspects of the Declaration have you heard about?
Being on our own, being free to do not like we want, that type of thing.
Of course, this might mean war with England.
Well, we're already in that, so if it's worth it, so I'm for it.
Have you been a part of any of the things that have happened so far?
Yes, I've been working with the women in getting the supplies together and listening to the men talk, so forth and so on.
What are they saying? How do they feel about this declaration?
Most of them are for it, are excited about it and want to go through with it. There are some who have reservations because, what could happen.
That was Jim Ferguson on the streets of Louisville talking to some Louisvillians about this reported document that concerns independence, a Declaration of Independence. The story continues to develop. We'll stay with it. You stay with us. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
We've been attempting to reach the man who allegedly was primarily responsible for the drafting of this Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. But at this point, we have not. We have him on the line now, I'm told. Is this Thomas Jefferson?
Yes, sir, it is.
Mr. Jefferson, rumor has it that, in fact, you were the guiding hand of this Declaration of Independence. Will you confirm that?
Well, I did have something to do with it, actually. I suppose it's been said of me that I was the architect of it. However, I contributed to it, but along with a number of other people. I can't take sole responsibility or sole credit for it. However, I believe that if I did contribute a great deal to it, it was in framing it, the framework, the legal terms, and that sort of thing. And, of course, some ideas of my own which were accepted after they had been brought before the other group of men who were involved, indeed, in forming the Declaration. I stand, as everyone must, on his own acts, and if there is difficulty over this, or if I am a treasonous person because of it, then so be it. I did what I felt was right. We are establishing freedom. We are not being treasonous to anyone. It's going to give us something to look to. It's going to give us a foundation for the country itself, and it's going to show at last the rest of the world that it doesn't have to live under the yoke of another nation which is oppressing it. And that has, to my knowledge, not been done in centuries, and I think it's important. We have a whole new land here to develop, a huge land, and I believe that if we go about it with this kind of precept at the beginning, we're going to show the world a shining light. I believe that it's the best thing that we could possibly do, and indeed, under the circumstances of oppression, the only thing we could do.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas Jefferson. We'll continue to seek out comment on the Declaration of Independence, and the moment we get confirmation that it has been signed, we'll let you know. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit?
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
At this point, it looks as though the signing of a Declaration of Independence is almost a certainty. It is also almost a certainty that when it is signed, it will also be a declaration of war with Great Britain. Louisville Alderman Jerry Abramson responds to the war aspect of this Declaration of Independence.
Sometimes principles have to be backed up by the muscle and the gut of the human beings who feel so strongly that they're being kept under shackles and made to be subservient to a governmental entity hundreds of thousands of miles away in England that has no feeling whatsoever for exactly what's going on in these colonies and what the needs of these people in these townships are. And I suspect you can only be pushed so far until finally you throw up your hands and say, the system doesn't work. The system's got to be changed. And after peaceful attempts to bring about a change, which we've gotten nowhere whatsoever in terms of any type of recognition by the King of England, I suspect that sometime there is a necessity for a call to arms. And that point has arisen.
Reaction to the Declaration of Independence from Louisville Alderman Jerry Abramson. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land. Can you feel the spirit? Yes, I feel the spirit.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
This story of the signing of the Declaration of Independence continues to develop. Let's get some more reaction now to the entire idea of declaring independence. Here's Jim Ferguson.
We're on the streets of Louisville speaking to various people at random about this alleged signing of the Declaration of Independence. Sir, may I have your name?
My name is Sam Gifford.
What do you think it's going to mean to you if they have signed it or do sign it?
Well, I think it's going to mean the beginning of something that's pretty hard to foretell. We're struggling pretty hard right now.
There have been quite a few skirmishes in the past 3 or 4 years with the British already, and
we've had great problems, and one of the problems is trying to get everybody to think along the same lines, and we have some fine leaders, but even the leaders disagree as to what the ultimate Declaration of Independence should contain. And it seems to me that unless there is pretty much unanimous agreement, it's going to be very difficult to get anything off the ground.
Right, now, if it is signed, it's kind of treasonous almost.
Well, that's why we're here in the first place. The chance was taken when we left to come over here, and I don't see any reason why we should be afraid of that now. The decision was made a long time ago. And it's important for us to go ahead and follow through with the plans and the ideas that we had originally.
So if the Declaration of Independence indeed has been signed today, you would be in favor of it?
Absolutely.
That was Jim Ferguson on the streets of Louisville talking to some Louisvillians about this reported document that concerns independence, a Declaration of Independence. The story continues to develop. We'll stay with it. You stay with us. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
We have on the line at this time Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania. Mr. Franklin, you were on the committee that was appointed to draft this Declaration of Independence, along with Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, John Adams of Massachusetts, Roger Sherman of Connecticut, and Robert Livingston of New York. What was the thinking of the committee when they were drafting it?
Well, I believe that, first of all,
Probably it was one of the few times in history that people in the military and political area of life got together and really felt the same way, and we were trying to establish guidelines for the whole country, for a new nation, and we're trying to do this with fairness as we saw it, and something that would really be important to them all their lives and important to the future generations. We weren't as much concerned with just the moment as we were, I believe, with the generations which will follow. This land is going to develop. It's going to be, we think, a huge land, and we want something that will be effective, not just today, but tomorrow as well. You know, actually, the franchise is the common right of free men, the right to vote, you see. It's really his only expression. It's one time a right, a privilege, and a weapon. In this case, it was a weapon, too, because we actually had to fight off tyranny and oppression. We have fought hard to establish ourselves, and now we have proven that we can do it.
That was Benjamin Franklin, one of the 5 men who served on the committee that drafted this Declaration of Independence. I'm Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
This story of the signing of the Declaration of Independence continues to develop. Let's get some more reaction now to the entire idea of declaring independence. Here's Jim Ferguson.
We're on the streets of Louisville speaking to various people at random concerning this alleged signing of the Declaration of Independence today. Sir, may I have your name?
I'm Bob Carhart.
Bob, what do you think about this signing of the Declaration of Independence?
I think it's going to be pretty good for everybody.
Have you heard about the Declaration?
Yeah, I'm very interested in it, as a matter of fact. Been following the goings-on fairly closely.
What aspects of the Declaration interest you, or you find interesting?
I think that the fact that we're going to consider each person on an equal basis, men, women, black, white, I think that concerns me most of all. I have great faith that the future holds things that we'll probably break away and become our own man, so to speak.
Are you saying that you might be actively involved in this thing?
Yes, but on an undercover basis.
That was Jim Ferguson on the streets of Louisville talking to some Louisvillians about this reported document that concerns independence, a Declaration of Independence. The story continues to develop. We'll stay with it. You stay with us. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land.
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
In trying to get some perspective of what has prompted this Declaration of Independence, there has been some turmoil, particularly in the Boston area over the past few years, as some have defied the decrees of King George. One of the leaders of these activities has been Samuel Adams. Mr. Adams is on the line now. And Mr. Adams, you have been called a radical.
My response to that is that whenever anyone does anything which is unpopular to a group, especially in this case a group of oppressors, they are called radicals. Well, I'm fighting for a cause I'm proud of, and if that makes me a radical, then I'm proud of that too, and I'll continue to be a radical. I want to be a thorn in their side as long as I live, because it's time somebody spoke out against them, and I'm speaking out against them at every opportunity on street corners and everywhere else. I lead any movement I can which is against the British, against oppression, taxation, and the taking away of the freedom of man.
You were involved with what's been called the Boston Massacre.
Yes, of course. I was a part of it. I'm proud to have been a part of it. I'm sorry about the men who lost their lives, but I must say this, they laid down their lives willingly. They knew what was going to happen, or at least they felt it was a strong possibility, and we did that to let the world see the kind of people we were dealing with.
Well, thank you, Mr. Adams, for talking with us. That was Samuel Adams, who incidentally is a relative of John Adams, one of the men who is involved in the drafting of this Declaration of Independence. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit?
Now from the 1776 News Desk, here's Glen Bastin.
We're still watching events in Philadelphia, waiting for some word out of the Congress on the possible signing of a Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. Our man Jim Ferguson continues to get reaction on the streets of Louisville to the reports we've had so far. Let's check in with him again. Jim?
We're on the riverfront Belvedere, and I'm speaking with
Yvonne Gardner.
Yvonne. What do you think about this signing of the Declaration of Independence today?
I think it's about time it should happen.
Why?
Because we've been dependent on the mother country for so long, and
Jim, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt you right now and go to Philadelphia. Melanie Roberts is there, and she is on the line with us at this moment.
Glenn, the Congress has adjourned and the members have left the chamber. However, all have refused to comment. There are some indications, though, that they may have indeed signed a Declaration of Independence. Those members known to be favoring the document, Jefferson, Franklin, and the like, seem to be in a rather jubilant mood. And I got a look at the vote totaling board before the doors to the chamber were closed and locked. It showed a unanimous vote by the colonies on something. And one other thing, you may hear a bell in the background. Well, a few minutes ago, the bell atop the building where Congress meets began ringing. Now, this normally is reserved for some special message or warning. When I asked one of the members of Congress about the bell, he said you might call it the Liberty Bell.
Now, from the 1776 news desk, here's Glen Bastin.
Well, as we reported earlier, a Declaration of Independence has been signed in Philadelphia. Louisville Mayor Harvey Sloan, who has been tied up with some problems of his own in this city throughout this week, took time out a little while ago to hold a news conference to talk about the signing.
Now, about 13 colonies have accepted the idea that they are now on their own. Benjamin Franklin has said that, and I quote, "The franchise, meaning the vote, is the common right of free men." My hope is that the Declaration will pave the way for greater participation of Americans, men and women, young and old, black and white, in their new government. We declared our independence in order to promote freedom and democracy.
That was Louisville Mayor Harvey Sloan. We've had reports out of Philadelphia that there have been bells ringing throughout that city. This is normally reserved for some sort of warning. But we understand that there has been no problem. It could have been connected with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
Can you feel the spirit of 200 years ago? The spirit that is lifting up the land. Can you feel the spirit? Yes, I feel the spirit.
Now, from the 1776 news desk, here's Glen Bastin.
Well, we thank you for having joined us this July 4th. Indeed, our Declaration of Independence has been signed, and its effects are being felt more today than ever before. Let us be extremely thankful for July 4th, 1776. This is Glen Bastin at the 1776 News Desk.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Perhaps an historic event in Philadelphia today.
Created equal.
King's got a long arm, and King's liable to come over here and lean on us before this thing's over with.
That it was indeed Representative Thomas Jefferson who did the primary drafting of the document.
Of happiness.
I don't know, this guy Jefferson might be president someday if they have things going right. It could be the king of America, too, I guess.
Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
I think it's about time it should happen.
Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends,
I am struck by the audacity of it all.
People to alter or to abolish it.
Benjamin Franklin said, we'll all hang together or we'll hang separately.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America,
the Army will finally be supported in the way it needs to be if the American people want to be free.
Intentions.
They feel now that perhaps the whole country is becoming united.
these united colonies are, and of
our very lives might be at stake.
Independent states.
Yes, I've been working with the women in getting the supplies together.
The connection between them and the state of Great Britain is...
It's going to give us something to look to. It's going to give us a foundation.
They have full power to levy war.
I suspect that sometime there is a necessity for a call to arms.
Acts and things.
It's important for us to go ahead and follow through with the plans and the ideas that we had originally.
Firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.